In the curiosity class this morning, who is this gentleman? Where does he work? Exactly. Thank you for reading. And what's his function there? What does he do? He has the best job in the world, which is. So before we get started, I want to remind people, hashtag #UOCotton for people who are on Twitter. And I want to bring up a statement that Ed made this morning in the curiosity class. A good planner is mentally generous. And I want to thank Richard Ward, too, for being so generous to bring Ed Cotton here. But Ed has been here for a day and a quarter and has been very mentally generous. And I'm sure you guys are going to make sure he's mentally generous until he heads up to Portland if we can get there in the snow. But in a way of thanking him, too, I wanted to present him with something that we found a fantastic artist who has created something that is extremely unusual, which is a kaleidoscope, one-of-a-kind kaleidoscopes, which we want to present to him because his trip here is helping all of us see things differently. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Do I have to open it in front of everyone?
If you do, you start there, you won't want to
Okay,
stop.
maybe later. Okay. So there are no bars to go to?
Close enough.
Yeah? Okay. Thanks very much for coming out when there are bars that are open to listen to me. I know that beer can be a compelling draw. So what I want to do is I'm going to try out something that's really, really new in terms of my thinking about what I'm calling the past, present, and future of great ideas. So hopefully this will work. No. Let's go to manual. So the most common question I get asked in the agency now is, what's a breakthrough idea? Because I want to create breakthrough ideas. And the problem I think we've got is, like, we don't know what they are anymore. And we don't know what the context is. We don't know what the rule set is. And what's a reasonable high bar. So I want to try and answer some of these questions in the course of the next 7.5 hours. Next 35 minutes. So let's try. So everyone knows that these are kind of some cliches about great ideas. You know, you hear they're written in textbooks, they're told by creative people. You know, great ideas transform, great ideas put a stake in the ground, you know, great ideas make money, great ideas make their own media, great ideas engage. So what this creates is really a proliferation of opportunities. So, oh, hang on, wasn't that supposed to happen? So if you're a creative or a planner, you know, working in the idea space, you have a lot of things, great things you can make. So you can make great products, you can make great experiences, you can make great entertainment, you can make great utility, you can help enable great conversations. And I think this is really challenging because the people who used to work in the ad business, still work in the ad business, used to think it was really, really simple. All they had to do was they looked at 97.5% of all US advertising and they said, I could do better than that. I could be one of the 2.5%. It's pretty damn easy, right? Just to do better than the other 97.5%. But if you take that away as a benchmark, what do you have? What are you comparing yourself to? What are the great ideas? It becomes really, really hard. So I'm just making this as an observation for those of you who want to be and are creative, and those of you who are aspiring to be planners and hoping to inspire those creative people. It's really tough to be a creative person now. So some of the reasons for this are obvious. You're dealing with them every day. By the way, if you think any of this is like bullshit or you want me to like repeat something or explain something, feel free to make this interactive. I don't necessarily want to do all the talking. If you have questions or thoughts and it provokes an idea, feel free to interrupt me, because I'll just go on talking for 7.5 hours. So we know everything has gotten faster. There are all these new channels, media channels. The world has opened up. And now an idea is global. It has global meaning instantaneously the minute it is let out of the bag. And we deal with this every day when we have a client based in New Jersey, but their headquarters are in Munich and Bavaria, and they just want to do their own thing, and they put a viral video out, and we get calls from Adweek saying, what's this viral video you guys did? Well, we didn't do it. They did it in Germany, and it's there visible to the eyes of the world. There's no geography or drawing lines around the mini brand. It's a global brand, and everything that is expressed becomes a global piece of communication that is hard for us to control. Clients and consumers want more than an ad. I think if you ask people if they wanted to see ads, most people say no. Most people don't want direct mail. Most people don't want pop-up ads. Most people, want to remove themselves from the onslaught of communication. So they want things that are more and better than ads. And then brands themselves, when you get into this whole notion of Twitter, the Twitterverse, the conversation, the social network, where brands have to and corporations suddenly have to humanize themselves, this is really creating a radical transformation for how we communicate and how companies talk to their customers. And this is all stuff you know and live with. So if you look at it from a design perspective, for example, this is the latest Economist cover, the instant Stradivarius. Basically, with 3D printing technology, you can theoretically print out a violin. It's just like that idea of printing out a violin is just kind of mind-blowing. But you can imagine a time when we won't have inkjet printers. We'll have 3D printers where we can print out our own products, and it's not too far away. If you go to Nike and you go to the R&D lab or wherever, you'll see them printing out real plastic versions of their shoes, which is actually huge to be able to see a living three-dimensional object rather than just looking at it on a CAD screen. You got people, this is a group called Made by Many out of London, talking about agile strategy. We don't want to wait. We don't need to spend a lot of time getting to the strategic insight. We can have an agile approach to getting that. Collaboration and conversations over strategy decks and documentation, simplicity of purpose over sacred consumer insights, testing hypotheses over long-winded research and deduction, and responding to change over following a plan. So if you talk to the Made by Many guys, and they have this really interesting process, they're basically digital experience designers. The way they work is to create a very small team of clients and their agency folk, and they go into a room for 2 hours, and they say, okay, on a piece of paper, imagine what your digital experience could be like. So, clients come to them with a problem. We need a better digital experience. We need a different digital experience. Everyone in the team iterates. It doesn't matter if you're a creative or a strategist or a manager. You iterate and ideate a vision for that digital experience. They then work as editors saying, yeah, pretty good idea, yeah, not so bad, pretty good. At the end of the day, they end up with 5 or 6 ideas that they then give to their design team, who visualize and bring to life. That evening, they put them out to test. And they say, okay, we developed 300 ideas here. We think about 6 or 7 of them are pretty interesting. We tested these online last night, and here's the one that's winning. So, very, very rapid fire, rapid prototyping, moving to ideas really quickly. And then if any of you saw The Social Network, the movie, you remember where they were creating the application and instantaneously being able to see the responses after a very short build time. So these are some of the kind of realities that we're dealing with. So it led me to the thought of what's framework for thinking about great ideas. I mean, if you don't have a benchmark and you don't know how to think about great ideas because that 30-second spot has kind of gone away and that used to be your benchmark, maybe we ought to have another framework or invent one. So I thought, well, maybe a lifespan timeline could be an interesting way to go. On the left is a mayfly, a day. It lasts a day. It has a very short, sweet life and disappears after a day. And then you have a giant tortoise. I don't know, anyone know how long a giant tortoise lives for? Anyone can look it up on Google? 300 to 400 years over here. Any greater? Something like 500 or 600? Do I have a 500 or 600? 1,000 years. So we think maybe 200? No. Okay. Someone can check that and let us know. So I thought, well, okay, what about an idea timeline? What about, like, you have ideas that last for 5 minutes, 50 years, or 100 years? You could say plot things along that timeline, like the 5-minute communication idea is just a viral. Maybe a business could last 30 years. I think the really good businesses, they tend to last the length of a human life. I think they're about 80, 85 years is a good lifespan for a business, an average good business. Then maybe a world-changing idea, 50 years plus. So if you look at world-changing idea, this guy Larry Brilliant, what a great name. I mean, if you're going to be cool, if you're going to be little Larry Brilliant, you better be brilliant, right? He is. And he, in the 60s, thought of taking on smallpox was actually like fighting a war, and that he needed to mobilize thousands and thousands of volunteers to inoculate people in India. And almost he could be described as being single-handedly being responsible for the obliteration of smallpox in India. World-changing idea, world-changing practice. Maybe not all of us will be as brilliant as brilliant. So in our world, if we use this framework, you have the mayfly of the communication world, the viral video, a lifespan of approximately 5 minutes. You have ads that may have a one-off execution that may be defined as entertaining, that may have a little bit of a longer lifespan. You have campaigns. We could define them as a series of ads under a theme. If they're really good, like Old Spice, we might anticipate the next one. They might be entertaining. They might be interesting. And you could have the same thing be true for digital and social. So go back and add some more things to that, like utilities, digital experiences that are personal and informative. They could last a reasonable amount of time. Utilities that are relevant and useful could have a little bit of a longer lifespan. So let's think about virals. How many of you remember this viral? Okay. Do anyone know who this was for, other than reading out there? John West Salmon. Yeah, good. Just checking that you're paying attention. So you remember this? It was pretty interesting, narrative. The basic story here was a kind of a pretty good brand message as well as a viral, which was, we did go to great lengths to make sure that our salmon is caught and canned freshly. So here's this conflict happening between the John West fisherman and the bear fighting over who takes the salmon. This thing was huge at its time. You were probably about 7 years old at the time when this was out. But if you remember it, it was really huge. And it started to, for an advertiser that in the UK couldn't advertise because they couldn't afford to be on television, they were blown away. And this sort of sent a benchmark. It sent a sort of a shockwave through the ad industry where clients said, I want a piece of that. Get me a $50,000 viral. I mean, that's brilliant. Get me the people who can make me a $50,000 viral, and we're going to be in business. I'm going to look like a hero as the CMO, because not only have I slashed my marketing budget, and I've done it in a really creative way. So that's kind of our model. Huge one-off value. The way we thought about them was that they were very cheap impact. They're non-repeatable. They have shock value. That's really what they survive on. And they have limited branding. You can't really get into a lot of product benefits in a viral, because the idea here is that you're going to share it, right, with other people, and you want to share something that's ultimately entertaining. So one of the standout ads from this year's Super Bowl, everyone loved this. It's a very traditional narrative. I mean, this ad could have been made in 2005 or 2000. It had to be made in 2011. Classic craft skills, really well executed, understood the power of an iconic property as an ad. It's a one-off great ad. Then you have campaigns. I'm not saying this is necessarily great, but it's a model. It's, we've got a tagline, Chevy runs deep. We've got a bunch of executions under that tagline. It becomes a campaign. And then you've got digital experiences. You've got things like Nike ID, where e-commerce suddenly became fun because you could actually not only buy your pair of shoes, you could actually design them at the same time. So suddenly this is going to be a sort of benchmark in what we can do digitally as we give the user more control. So what happened, is everyone tracking with this? Is it making any sense? Is it complete bullshit? Am I convincing you? Okay, I'll keep going. So in the last 5 years, I think we discovered that we're in an ADD world. Viral is perfect for media snacking and sharing. It's a 1 in 100 shot, and you need to go to agencies and a lot of specialists to get that viral made. The world of entertainment, making a great, entertaining, well-crafted ad. I mean, people are going to watch an ad. The 2.5% of ads out there, if it's entertaining, if it's interesting. That's an area for agencies. We're increasingly seeing people in Hollywood move into that space. Funny or Die. We've made ads with them. They made ads for us, and they're making ads for a bunch of other people. And you'll find Saturday Night Live writers and other people in the entertainment business increasingly moving into advertising. A world of spectacle, like the big production, big budget, $4 million spots that Wieden & Kennedy's done, often for Nike. I think we're still going to see that. They're going to be shareable. They're going to be impactful, like they've always been, and it's an area for agencies. And then in the last 5 years, we discovered this new world, which is a new separate world of utility and commerce, and that's where the digital shops came to the fore. And suddenly we saw a threat because everyone wanted digital, everyone wanted utility. Clients loved the idea of being able to create an experience that links directly to commerce, and they saw the digital shops as being the guys who had the chops to do that. But I think what's happened now and where we're at now is at a really different place. I think everything I've kind of told you is not really true. So I apologize for leading you up the garden path, as we say in England. Everything is now in play. There are no rules, and boxes are out. Because you can actually have this thing where entertainment can now meet utility and commerce. The idea that these things were packaged neatly into boxes and couldn't coexist and couldn't, kind of breed and mutate is now kind of mythology. So I got this very disturbing image of a bird that is so freaky. I don't want to look at that for too long. But mutants are cool, and it is the bastardizations are sort of happening everywhere. And I just want to give you some examples of that. So if you were in New York, like I am, you could not have avoided the Decoded campaign to launch Jay-Z's book. I mean, if you look at what was going on here, it's really interesting. Microsoft actually paid for this campaign. I mean, Bing was behind it. They supported it. They did a lot of the interactive pieces that made up this experience, which was out of home, multiple media touch points, a restaurant takeover, out of home, and a game, all in one that lasted a very short period of time. Got a lot of attention, a really very clever use of media, and a really interesting hybrid. Johnny Walker made an 8-minute brand video. It's like, who wants to watch an 8-minute brand video? I mean, it goes against and defies all the rules of short-form viral. This doesn't make any sense. It doesn't compute. But with great writing, fantastic acting, and great production, they made something that was actually watchable. We could look at Virgin and say, oh, well, or look at Twitter and say, oh, Twitter is a customer service tool. It's a great way of responding to questions that customers have in real time and solving them. But if you solve them in an interesting way, like someone who's been disappointed suddenly finds that they've got a $200 voucher, or somebody who announces that they graduated while they're flying on a Virgin flight, and Virgin says over Twitter that they're buying them a drink to celebrate their graduation, you've suddenly got Twitter as a branding tool. So these boxes and places that we put these channels and these ideas and are increasingly breaking down. Did anyone see this, remember this Arcade Fire digital experience? It was a kind of viral digital. It showed that this thing had playability, shareability. It used really cutting-edge technology to bring us a very personalized experience that we could share with other people, and it was digital. Viral, we used to think of viral as just being like a one-off idea, but the guys at DDB Stockholm came with the fun theory idea for VW, and it's multiple executions that are viral. It's like a viral campaign. And then just another example of a music video that's sponsored by Diesel that allows you to do e-commerce from the video. So while this thing is playing and these people are dancing, you can stop it at any moment in time and see what they're wearing and actually buy the product. So the point I'm trying to make, and I'm hoping I'm making it clear enough, is that these boundaries that we thought were around don't really exist anymore. There's just a blurring and a breakdown of those boxes. So if you go back to my model, what you basically say is actually this sort of doesn't really work anymore. So the metaphors I'm using are Legoization and the mashup of conversation, commerce, utility, and entertainment. So that is, forcing ideas on top of each other and using things as building blocks. If you go back to this slide, hang on a minute. No, okay, further on. So really, it's back to those people who said, I only want to be one of the 2.5%, or I've got to be better than 2.5%. Really, I think the opportunity now is we break out of the tyranny of the 30-second spot. I mean, we don't have to use it anymore. We may have something more to say. We may have to tell a brand story like Johnny Walker did that took 8 minutes. Someone saying, oh, no one's got the attention span for 8 minutes. And somebody creatively at BBH fought for that idea and said, actually, we can do something that is compelling, and what do we have to do to make that? So shackled thinking with 30-second spots, I think, is gone. So I think what we have in its place are conversation plus viral plus, it's a plus piece. It's the plus what are you doing in addition to this box, and how are you combining these boxes and cross-fertilizing these boxes and creating these mutants out of these boxes. So products, I think, are important too. So like, a product you want to be relevant, useful, new and different helps, and sexy helps even more. I love this example of Hendrick's gin. So William Grant and Sons is a Scottish-based whiskey distiller that had no business in the gin business. Its brands are rooted in whiskey. It had manufacturing capacity to make gin. And it went to an ad agency that was called Gyro at the time, but it's now called Quaker City, and said, develop a brand for us. It's not really a product, it's really a world. I think if you think of Hendrix, it's sort of a fantasy world of eccentricity that they've created around this product. It's not just a unidimensional thing. It exists in many forms and formats that has life. And then you think at the business end, for a long-term idea, and I've shortened the lifespan of business because I do believe that the reality is that business lifespans have been shortened. So things that aren't going to last as long. So some examples here. They say Zynga is a $10 billion business. Probably grown the $10 billion in 3 or 4 years, just using the multiplier effect of the social network and their tie-in to Facebook. Who plays any of this Cityville, Farmville? You can own up now. You're with friends. You're amongst friends. You can share. Last year you played. But then you go, someone's going to say, I have a friend who thinks they might play. Okay, but this is an addictive phenomenon. My favorite of all is Red Bull. Now, I don't know how much you know about Red Bull, but I think these are the unsung marketing geniuses. Their ads, not so much. Their production, their sports sponsorship, their sports films, their events, world class. It's allowed them to build a brand through their own media, through creating their own media. About 2 years ago, there was a soapbox derby in San Francisco, and I went along to it. And it was like the biggest commercial shoot you'd ever been to in your life. There were 75 cameras. There were deep production teams. There were cornered off areas. There were people going around interviewing all the soap derby drivers. It was all Red Bull. Now they're selling media to other brands. They've created, they make the best-selling energy drink in the world. They've also got a business selling their media to other brands. Pretty amazing.
I work at the library, and we've actually found hauled-out books with Red Bulls inside it.
Were you part of that?
No, but I think every 3 months or so, the Red Bull girls come around. They have Red Bull backpacks and just go through and hand out Red Bull to everyone.
What was I going to do here? Well, I told this story earlier, but this was the Twitter story, which I think is great. The Twitter story is a group of guys working at a podcasting company. It's basically allowing people to put up podcasts, download podcasts, called Audio. The fact is that no one liked working there. They didn't even listen to podcasts. They were scratching their heads wondering what the hell they were doing. And they did a kind of an off-site retreat, which was let's reinvent the business. And one of the ideas that came out of one of the guys was SMS for groups. It was really an idea for a business that became Twitter. Now, you can debate whether Twitter is a business or a legitimately profitable business, but I would say it's a pretty powerful brand already, and it has the makings of being a business in a very short period of time. Flip is just, again, this is interesting because I think the lifespan of the Flip company is severely constrained by the ability of mobile phones to deliver very high quality video. So they sold to Cisco for $300 million about 18 months ago. But the insight here to that business was great. What they discovered was that mums were doing point and shoot, and they were huge volume photographers, and they were keeping the developing labs at Walgreens and stuff alive with their prints. But when it came to video, you got a 500-page manual with a video camera, and mums were just going nowhere near it. They were handing it to dad and said, "You work it out," and dad was like, "I don't know, I'm not really interested in this." So they came up with the idea of, what if we could have? I think so their business with digital still cameras was 30 million units a year, and it was only 3 or 4 million units for digital video cameras. And their brief to their designers was, we want a camera that someone can switch on and have fully operational within 20 seconds. So the birth of the Flip camera came about from that. So a really interesting, great business idea. This is my favorite thing at the moment. The School of Life is, and I've just been on a School of Life course because I went to London in December, and I went on to do a course on gastronomy and beverage taste. So I could learn about things like cheese, coffee, what else did I learn about? Taste in general. And I went with a bunch of people we went together to learn about this thing together. And what I think is really clever here is, this idea that maybe there's another way of looking at adult education. So, maybe you don't go back to university to learn the things you would have learned at university, just in a more advanced way. You learn life skills. So one of the courses they do is on conversation. You go and sign up and become a good conversationalist. So if you happen to be sitting next to somebody, or having a dinner party, or which is very British, you might have something to say. And this is something of a phenomenon. On the right is a venture they just did with Morgan's Hotels in the UK, an American brand that's in the UK called the Mini Bar for the Mind. It's just a really great extension of their business philosophy into another venue, so they can take their brand out into places where it may not have been seen. So what you have, if we go back to the timeline of great ideas with their lifespan from 50 years to 5 minutes, you've got this kind of block over here, which is really now about it being entertaining and useful. You've got this businesses that change behavior. You know, Twitter's changed our behavior. Flip Camera has put a video camera in the hands of mum. The School of Life has helped people learn about life and get life skills in a really fun way. And we still have products now. So the problem we've got is, okay, what's the linkage? We've got business at one end, and we've got all this other lots of bits and pieces and interesting communication tools, and then we've got products in the middle, but we've got nothing there to sort of link them together. So if anyone's seen Inception, they know what this means. But it's very disorienting. You know, you don't kind of know where you are. I mean, everyone's doing lots and lots of bits and pieces, and they're creating really cool things. But what's it all about? So the danger is dozens of replicating mutants with nothing that links them. It sounds like a movie plot. Not a very good movie, but, you know. So it would be nice to organize and to know. So what I'm going to propose is, okay, like let's have an organizing principle. We're cool with all those mutating ideas and the myriad of opportunities, but with no glue, they're kind of meaningless. So what I come up with this thought of the potent business expression, the PBE. So I want to explain what that is. So it's more than a corporate vision. It's an externalized and internalized expression. It's humanized for conversation. It's a high bar. It gets employees motivated. They come into work on a Monday morning and they know why they're there and what the mission of the company is doing. And it's told, like, if you did a kind of like a semantic analysis of mission statements, you'd find the sort of same 5 or 6 words showing up time and time again. They're not particularly well written. They're sort of pandering to sort of a corporate political correctness is sort of meaningless. But a PBE would be like powerful and emotional, and people get excited about it. So a big emotional construct, an emotional construct that's based on a number of things: a human truth, a corporate truth, and something that connects to now. Like, oh, I see why this makes sense. It's like it's about now. We'll see multiple forms of expression coming from this pillar. It provides an anchor. It coerces. It gives people a blueprint for all those hybrids that they want to create. Instead of just saying, "Oh, welcome to the playpen, the sandbox. Just go and make because it's cool." There'll be a sort of a reason to make and a purpose to make and a direction to make. I mean, to some people, this might just be a tagline that they never really utilize. Because I think one of the things about taglines is that, you know, that if you don't manifest that tagline in a really creative way, it just becomes like, what the hell? It just seems really hollow. When those sports announcers say, brought to you by Ford, you know, driving Americans crazy or whatever. But, you know, it doesn't, if you don't bring it to life, it doesn't have any meaning. So left unactioned, without visible manifestations, it'll be shallow, hollow, and kind of meaningless. So where the PBE sits is kind of here. It's this thing that links the left with the right and the middle. It's galvanizing, it's motivating, it's generative, it's centering, it provides multiple avenues and opportunities. So not surprisingly, I don't have a long list of these because I don't think they've really been developed yet. But I'll share a couple. So T-Mobile in the UK has this principle called life is for sharing. And they delivered it. I mean, has anyone seen any of the T-Mobile work? I mean, it's really powerful, event-driven. So there was the dance flash mob thing they ran in a train stations. That was one of the first things they did. This here is Trafalgar Square with 30,000 people coming to Trafalgar Square to sing Hey Jude. There's a whole bunch of other things these guys have done. And you think about how smart it is, right? So you think about the strategy here, disconnected world, everyone's talking to technology, we're bringing people together, we're creating events, we're sharing those through video. The hit, millions and millions and millions of people watch this stuff. This platform, I know if I go to work for T-Mobile, I know what I'm here to do. I know what products I'm here to create. I know why I'm here. It's a very clear instruction set. And for the agency, I've got to deliver that. You might have non-articulated PBE, who Drexler don't think is a man of a lot of words over at J.Crew, but he knows it when he sees it. He knows what he had to do. He knew what he had to do to take J.Crew upscale. Basically improve on the quality, create something hipper and less expensive for Ralph Lauren. He saw a gap in the market. He has his own articulation. Someone probably need to bring that to life. But my favorite is this whole idea of work that has really re-energized the Levi's brand. It's really centered it. It's given the brand a purpose. This is the mayor of Braddock. The story here is really interesting. Braddock is this, who knows the Braddock story? So a few of you, do anyone want to tell other people rather than listen to me tell it? Anyone want to volunteer?
Braddock's a town in Pennsylvania that was like crime-ridden and had horrible unemployment problems and stuff like that. And Levi's essentially came in and like renovated the town. Like, I'm not sure the specifics of what they did. They like revitalized their economy and gave the town a purpose again. Almost as a PR stunt, but it also made a huge difference for this town and gave them a philanthropic face.
Yeah, so that's pretty much it. It was a rundown, kind of broken industrial town. This guy is a Harvard-educated mayor. He sort of comes right into town and claims it as his own, and basically starts, rebuilding it from the ground up. He made a presentation at a conference that Levi's executives were at, and they wrote him a check on the spot for $1 million and said, we want to be part of this. They didn't even really know. It wasn't like White and Kennedy came with this idea. It was a serendipitous idea that happened to work in harmony with all the other stuff that was going on. But it's one of the things I'm really interested in is like corporate social responsibility. Hangs out there like, we don't really care about it. We've got to do it. It's the nice to do. Someone is in CSR, and we take it reasonably seriously, but it's in no way expressed in our marketing. The integration here, the seamless integration of the idea between, how work is manifesting itself in the ad campaign and in the CSR. He went to Levi's and said, I'll take your $1 million, but here's the rules. No models in Braddock. The only people who will model Levi's clothes will be the citizens of Braddock. Really, really smart. So you can take this idea and, do things like they did in New York, which is the photographer's workshop. It's a really fantastic workspace, play space for anyone who's interested in photography. Studio in the background, cameras for rent, cameras to buy, photographers talking about their work. So maybe you want a checklist to see if you can develop a PBE. Sorry.
What was that last one about photography? What is this? Is this part of Levi's or is this something separate?
Yes, part of Levi's. So this is the photography workshop. So they did a number of workshops around the country. One was a printing one was a photography one. So this is like a physical manifestation of the idea where people go in and learn about photography, maybe use their facilities. It's not an ad, it's like an action, right? So we think about ads. An action is way more powerful than an ad. And you
Disconnect between what it was though and what they are, or does it? How does that talk to each other?
a disconnect between.
Well, so it's photography or printing, which are great crafts and stuff like that. Think about, how does that have to do with clothes? Or how does it in a PBA? How fit with their.
Well, you have
Right.
this elastic expression of work that you must declare it. Everybody's work is equally important. So they don't really discriminate between different types of work, and they understand their target, sort of creative. Maybe there's a weakness there. Maybe there's an opportunity to stretch it more. But definitely, there's a sort of center to the idea. So some checklists. Does it transcend the category? Does it connect to the truth? Can employees understand it and live by it? Is it an instruction set for like hundreds of ideas that can come out of it? And could it create a business? Yeah, a work line or work lines of clothes that bring more utility, functionality to fashion.
Ed, how long can a company keep it? Is the PBE going to be there forever, or does it change or transform, or can they throw it out and do a new one?
It depends how strong it is. I mean, I think we throw things away way too easily because people get bored and a new CMO comes in and he or her hasn't got their stamp on it, so they want to reinvent. So many good ideas are wasted by the churn and burn of people. So maybe things could be kept longer. And I think you have to know, you have to live with this thing for a while to see whether it has potential. So anyone getting it or confused? Powerful business expression. Potent, actually. I got it wrong. Powerful could work, yeah. So how do you get there? So what would you have to do to create these great ideas and come up with these PBEs? So what are the ingredients of good ideas? So I just find it's magic, timing and luck, savvy, and understanding. So what I want to do here is talk about the ideas, team, who creates them, what they do. So the essence of trying to create an algorithm for a great idea is freshness plus competence plus connectivity. So freshness is new, never been done before, seems really current. Competence is creativity, craft, technical chops, and connectivity is humanity, a business understanding, a cultural understanding of the zeitgeist. So your great ideas team would comprise the following people: artistry and magic people. They're not the creative department, they're the artistry and magic department. The entertainers, the strategists, contemporary human understanding people. The risk taker, someone who signs a check and says, I am fully prepared to support and back a never been done idea. That probably has to be the client, right? The technologist, someone who's got the technical chops, people who just have great intuition. They may be in the artistry and magic stuff. The chief culture officer, this is a Grant McCracken, if any of you have read his book about the importance of having people inside companies who understand culture, and business understanding. And I think you also want to have a client who wants to work with that team and wants to sort of be part of that mirror image, aspires to. They could either have that organization themselves, like a Pixar, or they could aspire to have that. And then also you need media. You need an imaginative amplification of your good ideas, which has gone from buying the Marshall amplifier broadcasting model to thinking of your brand as a sort of a Svengali Rupert Murdoch who's creating their own brand media empires. So brands creating their own media rather than relying on other people's media. So collaboration is key. I was going to show you a video of Pixar, but I won't because I haven't got time. But you can look at that, and it's cool. I mean, it's a great environment. I mean, it's you can't create brilliant ideas in a shitty environment. I mean, that's why banks don't have good ideas. Having a good environment that allows collaboration. If you watch this Pixar film, it'll talk about happy accidents happening by design in the corridors and in little meeting areas within the building that have been purposefully designed for those accidents to happen. So what helps make collaboration work? Oh, hang on. So a clear and inspiring instruction set. We talked about this morning, a really good brief, hopefully a PBE, an egoless attitude, the ability for people to work together, and planners working as facilitators and inspirers. So you have these team members, you have the business understanding guys who know about money. They're like the MBAs guys, right? They understand about competitors. And more than anything, they know about the DNA of the business. What's the heart and soul of this business? You know, if you're going to write it down, you know, what Kellogg is about, they kind of know, or what Unilever is about, or what Levi's is about. They know they can judge. There's some risk taker, you know, who can bring freshness, sign that check. You need a Mark Parker either inside the company or the client who's like, Mark Parker knows more about pop culture than he knows about sports. I mean, he's pushed Nike into lifestyle because he gets it. And you look at like a lot of the stuff they've been doing recently, it's more about the mashup of lifestyle with sports and how those two things come together, and that really comes from him and that understanding. You need a technologist. So I met this great guy, Chris Heathcote. Anyone I've met in mobile phones, all they tell me, all the presentations are is, here are 20 really great apps around the world. You know, these guys did this, these guys did this. This guy like blew up a phone and said, if you want to inspire creative people to create something interesting, you better know what's in a phone. You know, here's what it is. You know, there's a speaker, there's a microphone, there's a GPS thing, there's this. This is how they work together. So, you know, by having good technologists who understand, you know, hardware and software, you can make great ideas. You also need, you know, intuition, artistry, and magic. It's the intangible stuff that, you know, just is the creative magic. You need entertainers. This is the guy behind Improv Anywhere. I don't know if you've ever seen Improv Anywhere. It's just really sort of entertaining street theater stunts. You know, for example, dress 100 people up in a blue polo shirt that's exactly the same Pantone color as Best Buy, and go into a Best Buy and see what happens, and film it all. And then you need planners, because they bring you your contemporized human truths. This is a great example of from IDEO working with Shimano. One of the things they looked at was the bicycle market, and they looked at boomers as a huge population who were just dropping out of cycling because, you know, they didn't like the bikes, and more importantly, they didn't like the retail stores because they felt intimidated by the bike salesman who, you know, like you're 55. What the hell are you doing riding a bike? You know, if you don't, you know, if you're not buying the 25 gear specialized mountain bike, get out of here. So what IDEO did was kind of interesting. They did this exercise where they took these hardcore kind of bike retailers and they said, okay, you want to know what your experience is like from the boomers end? Go and buy your girlfriend some makeup in a, you know, a department store. And, you know, try and see how they talk to you and, you know, see if you can understand how hard it is for the boomers to come in and buy a bike. It's a good lesson. And they also created a bike that was much more kind of easy and less intimidating than the bikes that were out there. So really nice, interesting insights put into action that contemporized Shimano as an opportunity. So we're getting to the end now. This is the last slide. Oh, it is. It just exploded into the stratosphere. So the few things I want to say. So how it works: be realistic, know your strengths, know your idea space, your client's real goals. If you need to do more, bring in the troops. Recognize your role in the team. I think it's a good exercise here. It's like, okay, you guys can't do everything. Maybe there are other people in other faculties who you could bring in to extend your team to do more stuff with those specialists. You can't go big without collaboration. It's a new skill. And I think, back to the question, lack of patience and discipline can be the only barriers to longevity of an idea. Greatness can be iterative over time. You can get to greatness rather than starting with greatness. I think that's very important. And that idea of a PBE could be an achievable goal. It could be the thing that strategists aim for as the high bar to kind of galvanize everything and link those left and right sides. Have I confused everyone? For a moment there, I was like almost confused myself. That was dangerous. So, anyone got any questions or wants to debate, like, because this is like this is like a week old as an idea. You're the first people I've shared this with. And so it's like it's been living in my brain for 7 days. And it's a little bit of a mashup of different thoughts, but anchored by sort of one, okay, we need to define an organizing principle. Otherwise, those things are going to get out of control.
When you were talking about all the different people it takes to create these ideas, you have the risk takers, the planners, the entertainers. Are you kind of talking about that within an agency, or like what kind of context does that have? Is this just with any kind of collaboration?
It's not with any kind of collaboration, but I think if you're aiming for like this getting to great ideas today, a multitude of great ideas from a communications perspective, I think you need that combination of talent, and it's probably agency side.
So going off the idea of bringing all these people together, do you think there should be someone to facilitate all this communication, kind of a hybrid of all these different ideas, to make sure that the creatives understand how to talk to planners and that sort of thing? Do you think that's important for the future?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's like a question of who are the facilitators? What role? Is that a planning role? Is that an account management role?
Yeah.
So it's ill-defined yet, but definitely, there needs to be someone who really facilitates. And that's not just making sure that emails are sent out,
Yeah.
because that could easily default to that. It's like, how do you create, like, the environment, the workshopping environment to make that happen?
Creating culture within an organization.
Could be, yeah.
And we deal with that all the time. We deal with it in classes, and then we deal with it in a program and in a school. So I don't know where this is going, except that sometimes when you think about building the new prototype, you can say, oh, here's what we'll do, right? We'll put this in and this in and this in. But when you think about evolving and changing an already living organism, it's harder. How? What do you think? I mean, we've crashed down silos all over the place. That's good, but what else do you do to do that?
What else do you do to make that ideal happen?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of hard. One of the things I think would be really hard to do is if people don't know yet what they're really good at, it's hard to assign them a specialty. So that seems to me like a big challenge. It's like if you don't know, if you were still a generalist, if you're still T-shaped, it's hard. It's going to be hard to say I'm this person. But on the other hand, I think that experimentation of like you have architecture as a major here. Yeah. Do you ever work with architects?
Well, they're a client of ours.
But do you ever bring them into your teams?
No, we should.
So why can't you do that? So that's just.
Well, and yes, on a university campus, it would be seen as odd, but again, you break down those odd walls
That's
and
your next baby.
make that happen.
So I mean that would be me like I know it's really hard to get change inside an institution.
And I hate that as an excuse, so I'm going to shut up.
But maybe that's what you could look at and say, okay, are the people who could bring us something that is different to what we have today that are just our neighbors? So that could be just one opportunity.
When I first saw your blog post actually about the Levi's thing before you showed up, the first thing that popped in my head was, how do you successfully advertise charity? How does a company give back but then make everybody know about it without that sounding narcissistic? And after your PBE, you essentially explain that. You made your charity exciting in a sense. And my question would be, is there any kind of method to make charity provocative enough to have it stand alone, where you don't have to write a public relations brief to, write it and send it out to 100 million people just to get noticed? I guess to reiterate, is there any kind of method that you take as far as brand insight to make your charity provocative enough to have it stand on its own and be a
Well, I think, I just hate harking on about this but I do think it's a really good example. The Braddock example is most CSR stuff is really about working with grassroots organizations that you don't necessarily control. Like, you contribute, you make contributions to, and you may want to some people publicize those contributions. What is really interesting about this particular effort is it's entirely out of Levi's control. I mean, it's such a new entity, and it's such a living manifestation of what they want to do that word of mouth alone is sufficient enough. I mean, people want to know what this town is and what Braddock is. I mean, they didn't really need to say, they didn't write a TV ad and say we poured $1 million into Braddock. They just said, welcome to Braddock. And to the curious, which I would assume is their target audience, it's just a Google search away to find out. And much more powerful to discover that on your own than to be told it by an ad. So I think that stuff, if it's good, it kind of writes its own kind of narrative, and it writes its own ads that are almost created by the people who are searching for those answers.
I think it's also what you talked about with the other thing they did was engagement, that if you make something that people are interested in, they'll start talking, like the Levi's centers, the print one I read about. I mean, it got tons of publicity, and just by them doing it, it's just like, so I think it's engagement, the more you can engage the audience that you're talking to, they'll share that message.
Yeah, the tangible actions is like the big, thing with CSR. It's like that Nicholas Kristof thing I shared earlier, which is like, people don't trust non-profits to deliver. They don't like giving their money to a place where they're not sure it's going to happen. I think the same is true. What's going to happen with corporations do. I mean, it's just having tangible control over what happens to your money and seeing it do good makes a real difference.
You and I chatted about talent at the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting. Like I didn't know the technical term of the class I was talking to.
Media professions. It's 300 freshmen, and isn't it 300, Chris? Freshmen and sophomore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, I was just the one thing I said to Deb was it really dawned on me. Like I talked to a bunch of people who clearly haven't made up their minds what they wanted to do, and that's totally understandable. But from my perspective, where I'm going to be like, I haven't really thought of it this way. I thought, well, people decide they want to be account planners, and my job is to pick the best of them. But maybe my job is actually to inspire more people to become account planners and take those people who wanted to be creatives and get them over to my side. So I had a new view on the world just based on this afternoon, which is it's actually a talent war, and I want all the most talented people to come and work in my discipline and for my agency. That's really what I was saying.
There's smiles all around the room there.
This morning, and then in this presentation you were talking about collaboration. And this morning we discussed something about, like in Britain, people working in teams and how accepted it is, and how in America it seems more individualistic. Could you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, so my example, I thought, it was just an observation of mine that, as an outsider, I have a privileged position to kind of look at America. It's a little bit less clear now to me. I'm a little bit less objective because I've been here for 14 years. When I first came here, it was like all these insights were coming to me about the country because it was all fresh. And one thing I just made a reference to is I was really surprised when I came here that I remember picking up a trade magazine in England, and the front cover stories are creative team, Smith and Jones moves to Saatchi, Sarah Lucas and Jeff Stark moved to BBH. It's like we already had the concept of a team. You actually are more valuable in the creative world as a team than you are as an individual. So that already, then when I just saw the articles in the US, which are, ex-creative moves, I mean, you do get teams moving. The ratio of teams versus individuals in the US versus UK was astounding to me. It told me a little bit about how it's a lot about I and me and myself and what I do. There's a lot of pressure for individual achievement versus team achievement, which I think makes a lot of this stuff quite hard. So part of my journey has been to spend a little bit of time with people like IDEO. What I thought was really interesting about spending time there is it's an egoless institution. You can't kind of put your name on awards. IDEO puts its name on it. No one has like business titles on cards with titles on them. You kind of leave your ego at the door when you walk in, and you subjugate your ego to the greater good of the company. It's a very alien concept. But why I think it works is because when you're making a product, which is what IDEO do, so they're making an electric toothbrush or a physical thing for somebody, you have to respect the individual disciplines. If you're the graphic designer, you know that the guy who's the electrical engineer who's sitting next to you is really good at electrical engineering, and he knows that you're really good at graphic design. So the people who they bring into their dream team have their kind of skills, and there's a mutual respect when they workshop and collaborate together. So there's no ego. There's just, if you had that dream team like I suggested, hopefully the specialist skills would be strong enough to kind of remove the ego from it. Because you can't, I guess the whole point of what I'm saying is the art director and copywriter is a redundant concept. They can't create across all these channels in powerful enough ways on just two people. It's an impossibility. So, you need to make that team bigger.
By the way, someone in this room just had a first interview at IDEO and is about to go in for a second. Wait.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, just the culture of collaboration. I mean, it's an academic thing too, right? The best story actually I've heard on this, and it just reminded me, was Pepsi did this thing recently. It was a couple of years ago where they wanted to get the best brains from a number of agencies to work together. It was actually an IDEO project. But they paid them a fee, and there was a bonus incentive based on collaboration scores. So that I thought was really interesting. Like, okay, suddenly there's an incentive. There's a financial incentive to collaborate.
How did it work?
Some people did really well, some people didn't. There were people who scored high collaboration marks, and people who didn't. And I think IDEO probably scored very good collaboration marks because it's part of their culture, but BDDO maybe had a tough time. Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of things like that and incentives to fail. Again, it's a cultural push against. We don't tolerate failure. The marketing, the CMO guy who fails, gets fired. But maybe there should be a tolerance of failure that you can actually learn from it and do better stuff. So it's very complex.
Not really. I don't think it's complex. I think that there's not a lot of people that really want to put in the effort for it.
Right. It makes it hard to implement it. Anybody else have any questions? Matt?
So with everything in the advertising industry changing as fast as it is, we can pretty much expect to not know what we're going to see in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. What do you think the short list of major trends to keep our eye on in terms of what's going to be changing the most, or what's going to be driving that change? Do we look out for in the next 5 to 10 years?
I think 5 years is so far ahead. And just the way in which everything's accelerating, maybe the next couple of years you can kind of look out and see where the obvious things are. I mean, I think they're fairly obvious. These aren't going to be, breakthrough insights from you. But I mean, I think I think we've scratched the surface of the social network. I mean, I don't think anyone has really understood how brands can actually integrate themselves successfully in a social network. I mean, most of the efforts on Facebook have been pretty rudimentary at best, very basic. And then I think we got this hugely powerful personal device in the mobile phone that, again, is just, we're going to be spending more and more time with that thing. That phone is going to be just, unless everyone gets scared of it based on the health report that was issued yesterday, and starts dropping their phones. But the technology that's going into phones is just going to get more and more sophisticated. The capabilities of what they're going to be able to do is just going to grow exponentially. How brands and advertising engage with that device is going to be a huge issue. And it's currently sort of on the sidelines. It's a bit like social networking. It's felt to be a very private, personal thing that people don't want ads on. They don't want a sponsored text message showing up. They don't want stuff getting on their phone that contaminates a very personal device. But it's the people who can kind of solve for that and come up with creative solutions to bring brands in engaging ways to social networks and mobile in the next 2 years will certainly be huge. So you all know that.
And we the faculty have this, a little bit of a conundrum. Maybe it's not a conundrum. I'm tired like you and everybody else in here. So we buy and know and agree with what you're saying, with what Edward Boches brought us a couple of weeks ago. People are energized. And I know we'll still get calls from agencies, and you guys will still go out to agencies looking for a job. I have to have a job, right? And we'll look at that continuum of agencies, and there's a whole shit pile of them that don't agree, or that don't get it yet, right? Either they don't have the leadership, or they don't have the right clients, or they don't have. So in some ways, we have to kind of learn and teach together to say, okay, look, you're going to be having this, and that's what, you may have that job, but this is where it's going. So, that's a hard trick. It's a hard trick for them to go out and be a change agent, which what they'll be asked, by default, that's what will happen. But it's a hard gig. A few will go out and get those plum jobs where they're there. A lot of them will be in jobs that are still transitioning, shall we say.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really great point. I mean, sort of like the big reality check on everything is, we still have a client in Radio Shack that spends $120 million on television spots, and you can't get them to change and experiment to do anything else. And they have research this high that supports their television decision. And they're just one of hundreds of clients out there whose business hasn't, until your business is like, I mean, someone told me this story that was interesting, which is like MTV 5 years ago. It's like any company. They have to basically reinvent themselves. The only way they would reinvent themselves is when their executives feared that they wouldn't be getting their bonuses or they might be losing their jobs. Then they'll galvanize around survival instinct to come up with a plan to change because they want to survive. The same will happen to agencies. So yeah, you're going to have leaders and you're going to have people out there, who are pushing the boundaries and doing really interesting stuff. There are people already who get it, and there are people who are locked in boxes, who are big digital agencies who can't move out of those boxes. We want to try and find a way to get out of those. And there are agencies that, view change as a 2-year, 3-year plan. So, I mean, I think if you pick the right places and you have the right conversations, smart people in big enough agencies get it.
So what would you say are maybe one or two, we're not gonna ask you the long essay question, one or two indicators of an agency so that you know, as you're interviewing an agency, what should you kind of look for?
Well, I mean, I think it has to come from the top. So you have to have leadership at the agency who gets it. Because if it's just mid-level or junior people who are like, you know, leading the charge without that leadership, that's not going to happen. So look for what the leaders of these agencies are saying. When you're going to interview with them, do they get it? Look for the structure of the agency. Agencies that don't have digital capability, I mean, that's kind of a no-no, right? Agencies that are doing something interesting with their digital capability, other than integrating it, putting it at the center, putting digital creatives with more traditional creatives, you know, understanding that they can work together and you can get collaboration between those two. So that would be the things for me. It's like, does the leader see the future and see what's happening? And as a manifestation of that, what are they doing with digital? How are they organizing their digital functioning? Those are two litmus tests for me. If the leader doesn't have a vision and there's no digital capability and a vision for integrating digital, don't go there. No, but if they're paying you money, maybe. No, but I mean, you have to have a job.
Or
but
have your plan. You know, if you're there, have your plan to go there at
Right.
that moment.
Yeah, there's always like, you know, there's a lot to be said for going to places to learn. And you may not have a long-term view of staying in that place, but you believe that that agency might be able to give you some grounding. You may have an ambition to be somewhere else, but I would not go to a place that doesn't have visionary leadership and digital integration.
Kind of on a similar note to that, you were talking about how, as an example, Radio Shack doesn't really want to do anything other than traditional stuff. How do you try and work with a client that's so like stuck in the past, I guess? How do you try and bring them into the 21st century? Like, do you propose stuff to them, or are you just kind of waiting for them to come to the conclusion themselves?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think it's a mixture of both. I mean, we've brought a lot of really great ideas to them. We continue to do it. You know, we believe there's potential, but they're a retailer. You know, it's like, I mean, the bad expression is they're hooked on the crack cocaine of television ads and FSIs. It's almost like it's the gasoline that fuels their business. It drives people into the store. It works, and you start taking budget away from that. You know, there's less gasoline to power the engine. So it's hard for them, you know, it's hard for them to see what the alternative is, and if the payback on the alternative is going to be equal or greater than what they already have. And, you know, maybe Mini is a better example of where we have the license to experiment and play, and all that play and experimentation actually helps the brand. Have we really just like spent way too much time in here?
Well,
Are we
thank you.
overrun?
Wonderful, wonderful.
If anyone has any questions they want to ask me outside of the group, feel free to do so. Thanks very much.